Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Hey everybody, welcome to the stream tonight, Secret Science Wednesday. I hope you guys are hyped up because tonight's the night that we talk about science stuff. Pretty awesome. Yeah, some of you guys probably haven't seen that intro, but if you followed me when I first started streaming, the Alien Addict guys made that for me many months ago. I stopped using it. I actually forgot that I had it. I probably should have been using it more often. So we'll probably start with that one more often and then end with the songs at the end. Okay, well, thank you guys very much for being here early. I see a bunch of people are already in the chat. Thank you guys for being here. A lot of the usuals are out there. I saw Kimberly, I saw Evan, Ponderbuck, Sassy's in the chat tonight, as well as the Jalapeno, 1776, Justin, Jonathan, T-Bass. What's up, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. Okay, so tonight what we're going to be talking about is we are going to be talking about EVOs, ball lightning, plasmoids, and these are all really the same thing, plasma orbs. So if you're confused, technically all these things are the same. I've got a bunch of stuff lined up for us to review, some scientific papers, videos, concepts, etc. that's going on. So I thought we would start tonight by just talking about the basic idea in terms of how I understand it. And to do that, we're going to go back to our favorite videos that we have out here, which are the MH370 videos, because today is actually the 1-year anniversary of the video's reemergence. So on August 7th, 2023, 1 year ago, these videos reemerged on the social media site Reddit, on the subreddit called UFOs. They ended up being talked about for about 12 days. Basically, the only thing that was being talked about on that subreddit was these videos. Immediately, there were people that were, how can you possibly believe this is real? And then you had a lot of people going, whoa, how could anyone come up with some of this stuff? And pointing out how just looking at it, it passes the sniff test. It doesn't scream you CGI like a lot of TV and movie stuff does. So what we're going to be talking about today is specifically the orbs that we see in these videos. Because early on in the investigation, I was able to conclude that what we were looking at here was some kind of field around the orbs. And when I spoke to Salvatore Paez on my interview, it really started to sink in that like these are some kind of plasma field that we're seeing in there. Because his scientific paper, specifically, I think the high frequency gravitational wave generator, talks about the idea of having these like orbs where you could, fall into this geodesic in front of them. The heat signature that you see coming off the orbs, where it kind of like blends into the background with like the blue and the green, also would indicate that this is not a metal ball that we're seeing. And then it was Bob Grenier, who, when we spoke to Bob Grenier, we learned about low energy nuclear reactions. I didn't even know that term a year ago. And that really stands for cold fusion. And he's a big fan of John Archibald Wheeler and Ken Shoulders' work into some of this science. So what these orbs represent, maybe I can find bigger version to pull up here. Because it's important we understand the concept. Honestly, I would argue that the concepts are even more important to understand the science, because most people are not physicists. And what we're dealing with here is science that's real, but that a lot of people are not familiar with. And this is why I explain to people that this is both suppressed, but also in the open, hidden in plain sight, as we would say. And I think a lot of people have a hard time comprehending how that's possible, because they think that, well, if it's out there, then certainly CNN would be talking about it, but it's not really how it works. So this right here is, I mean, this is a smoking gun. On the right, you're looking at the Department of Energy's website of plasma physics, and you're looking at this heat signature that perfectly matches the heat signature we see in our plasma orb. And our plasma orb here is, you can see this heat signature is like, it's called like the Tesla sign or the Yukonavasara symbol. And Bob Greenyer says that this is consistent with what we would call a magnetic monopole. Now, a magnetic monopole, for people that are not familiar, is the concept of, normally with a magnet, you have this bar magnet where you have a north side and a south side, and then the magnetic field lines go from north to south like this. With respect to a magnetic monopole, they can be either just a south or just a north. So you only have one of the two. So when it's just south or north, then either the magnetic field lines spread outward from a central point, or they go inward from a central point. Now, the one that we are curious about is the one where they would be going inward at a central point. So if you have this magnetic monopole and all the magnetic field lines are being sucked inward, what does that remind you of? Should remind you of a black hole, because that's fundamentally, I think, what we're dealing with here, is they're able to create a miniature black hole where then you have this charged matter, or plasma, charged matter, sucking into that. And what is that allowing it to do? It's allowing it to produce huge amounts of energy. And not just huge amounts of energy, but coherent energy. I don't even think there's like a piece of glass surrounding this. I think that it just happens that where this field stops is where the coherent plasma hits the non-radiating barrier. It just doesn't go beyond that. Kind of like with a black hole, or like any type of, star or anything that you see in the sky. Like, why does it only extend so far? Because that's what the physics basically makes happen. The magnetic moment kind of keeps it structured within this very small area. Think of like the movie Spider-Man 2 with Doc Ock, the first Spider-Man 2. And in that movie, he talks about having the power of the sun in the palm of your hand. It's really what we're looking at right here. Yeah, you could say that they self-regulate as well. I would say that it's self-sustaining, which means it has longevity. As opposed to when they from the public science regarding making black holes, they always disappear instantly. The Hawking radiation, or in some cases like the virtual particles that they create, cause them to immediately collapse, like within nanoseconds. Now, what we're dealing with here is some type of very controlled, very, very small black hole that is able to be coherent and be able to be moved around like this. Now, how are they producing this? Early on, I had speculated they must be using lasers. How did I come up with that? It just seemed like the most obvious way where you would do something like this. It turns out that there are a bunch of laser experiments where they have used lasers to try to produce miniature, tiny, microscopic black holes. In addition to that, I think that what we see with respect to the black lines in front of the video, in front of the orbs, is also a laser. In fact, it could be using the exact same apparatus for both effects. It's hard to be sure. So my guess is, what type of laser? They may be using the same type of negative energy laser that they use to propel themselves forward to create the magnetic monopole, which allows for this cold fusion to be going on here. Now, what is required to pull this off? Huge amounts of energy are required. So I think you've seen some people in my replies comment that you would take a lot of energy. It may be that it doesn't take as much energy as we currently understand. but the idea would be it takes a lot. Now, the good news is that we have a lot of energy to work with. When you understand that we can harvest the 0 point fluctuations of the ether all around us, and that in a small area, there's enough energy to boil all the Earth's oceans, energy doesn't really become a problem anymore. We have access to huge amounts of energy that are out there. And we're going to dig into some of the science as well, because we're going to look at both sides of the argument today as well. But this is the core concept of something like ball lightning or exotic vacuum object, is that we have this coherent structure, high amounts of energy to produce it. Most likely lasers are producing it. There's also going to be a connection on this to sonoluminescence. So sonoluminescence is very similar as well. It has to do with this idea of cavitation, like a cavitation bubble. And maybe we'll look that up to explain that as well. But we're going to look at some other documents I have up here in a second, which will help put this into some context. I think that the sonoluminescence, which is sound waves cohering through water at a very specific point to create star in a jar, shows the same scientific concepts, if not the exact same science that we're talking about here as well. I don't know if what people have seen on YouTube is real. Some, Billy No Downside mentions he's seen some other ball lightning effects. I'm not sure. What I think that we've got going on here, though, is that there's something inside of these orbs. Could be very, very small. And it can produce a very localized energy field using these very high powerful lasers. And it can also produce this negative energy in front of the orb as well. And then it also has a third function, which is the ability of when we see the orbs converge, we can tell that they are also producing this wormhole at the same time. It may be that the same device pulls off all three of these. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. That would be an elegant way to design it, but this also shows like how incredible the engineering is on these orbs. The real giveaway here is the heat signature. The heat signature is something that really confirms the authenticity of the videos and the science related to it. No one's ever seen this heat signature, and it looks very odd on why it would even be in there. The last thing I want to point out here is that you can actually see the orbs reorient. Right about where I've paused it there, right after this, you can still see the heat signature pretty clearly. And for a second or so, you can't see the heat signature. That's because the orbs are reoriented on a 360-degree axis. Right there. And then they come out and they're ready to go, and then they start to converge. Now, I'm not going to talk about it too much today, but I did post a paper where I talk about this idea of a Casimir shell type 2. Now, I've been reading every single one of Hal Puthoff's papers because I've said this many times. I'm sure this guy has seen, he's seen probably these videos, and he's probably seen other videos that I don't know if they're as advanced as this, but when I read Hal Puthoff's papers, I get the idea that this is a guy that's seen this stuff, because I'm going through the same type of thing where it's like you've seen it and now you're just trying to explain it. And in one of his papers, he mentions the Coulomb force. The Coulomb force is what I've been telling you guys about for, I don't know, over 6 months, which is this idea of when you jam your magnets together. Imagine you have the same polarity magnet, a north over here and a north over here, and you jam them together. What happens? They're going to repel apart. And the faster and the closer you pull them together, the stronger that magnetic repulsion is going to be. What one of Hal Puthoff's papers does is try to equalize that repulsion of the Coulomb force with the attraction of the Casimir force. Remember, the attraction is a negative energy event from the Casimir force. So what if these are creating a Casimir shell, an electromagnetic charged Casimir shell around the plane? At the same time, they're collapsing in order to create the repulsive effect. And then where those equalize out is the throat of our wormhole, the mouth of our wormhole, which is the zap that we see right here. Right here. That's what I think is happening right here. That's just what my intuition says, is because the question is, how do you make a shell? Well, you have very powerful energy where you're jamming your magnets together, and those are creating an extremely powerful repulsive effect. And at the same time, you've got a Casimir shell around your object that's pulling it inward. And where those two forces equalize out, I imagine that's your wormhole. But we'll see. We're going to look for more science on that. But if you're curious about the post I made the other night, that's what I was imagining while I was reading Hal Puthoff's papers. And some people say, oh, well, show me the papers. Just literally go look at his, like, Google Hal Puthoff scientific papers and just start going through them chronologically from oldest and newest. And you see a pretty crazy pattern in terms of, like, maybe wormholes are possible. Maybe negative energy is possible. Here's how the Coulomb force interacts with the Casimir effect. And you're like, wait, is this guy just, like, giving me the recipe for how to make how to make a wormhole right now? Pretty crazy stuff, guys. Yeah, asymmetry is going to become important here as well. So let's take a look. Okay, let's do, which are we going to start with here? I've got like 10 things to go through tonight, and we don't have too much time. So let's start with, oops. Let's see here. Let's see what we got. Okay. Let's start with, I think we're going to start with one of these documents. And also, let me pull this up. I think we might start with work of Ken Shoulders. Sorry, I'm just trying to look through these. Okay. That one we don't need. Okay. Those last two are not going to worry about. I think we're going to start with the work of Ken Shoulders because I'm not super familiar with him. We're not going to get into all of his science today, but Ken Shoulders and John Archibald Wheeler had researched a lot of this stuff. Ken Shoulders died in 2013, which was a year before we teleported the airplane. Let's just read through some of his history because this guy was not a lightweight at all. And then we may do a follow-up science stream in the future about his work and John Archibald Wheeler's work. I just haven't had time to get to all of it. Ken's brilliance will be missed in the scientific community as a visionary in the field of new exotic energy vacuum objects, EVOs. He was a leader in this new frontier, but perhaps best known in the scientific community as the father of vacuum microelectronics. He worked at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. During this time, he fabricated the world's first microcircuits and later did some exotic and confidential work for the CIA and others. Ken has a history of working at the edge of science and engineering. He worked at the SRI Institute for 10 years as a staff scientist and started a field now called vacuum nanoelectronics, which is based on emission-active devices. Ken was also admired for his earlier work for SRI at Menlo Park, California, which resulted in many patents. Other inventions that were based on Ken's designs were the first commercially available quadrupole mass spectrometer, which he built in 1958. Also, it turns out, guys, that he knew Hal Puthoff as well and worked with Hal Puthoff, I think. Shoulders also stated at the times that it is better to develop electronics with free-flying electrons rather than develop transistors where the electron velocity is much slower due to the ion cores reacting with the electrons in the solid material and semiconductors. At SRI, he then started to construct vacuum systems for evaporation processes, as well as being known for multi-beam exposures of patterns of holes to develop the splint cathode array. He was also involved with flight technology. Okay, and then there's a quote in here somewhere. Okay. He went to the world famous Professor Feynman with his electron cluster concepts and was dismissed as a nut. But later, Feynman wrote a letter to Ken saying that he'd been thinking about it and discovered an explanation for his observations and theory that Ken was correct after all. He was even ahead of Feynman. So, by the way, Richard Feynman worked on the Manhattan Project, and Richard Feynman was the one that said that there's enough energy in a small area to vaporize all the Earth's oceans. So this guy came up and he even made Richard Feynman have a run for his money. Incredible. Okay, is this the part I wanted? Okay, yeah, this is it. His friend John Hutchinson, if you guys are not familiar with John Hutchinson had developed some type of anti-gravity and free energy devices. There's a lot of videos about John Hutchinson out there. We haven't even looked into John Hutchinson yet. His friend John Hutchinson spoke with Ken Shoulders about the inherent conflict between exploratory science and academic science. In academic science, that's all you're doing, piecing together things that you can pick up, Shoulders said. However, he is working on something you cannot look up. You cannot piece together. You cannot find the parts in books. That's the kind of stuff Ken worked on, and he knew the rule. You guys are wrong. You cannot get the kind of answers you want doing things the way you want to do them. And why do they say that? Because they are afraid of losing their academic connections. What we have to do in our field to make progress is to be very non-academic. Anyone that is in this frontier, in the frontier science, anybody that is out there in exploratory science, you cannot tolerate the rules of academia. They will perish. They won't find anything of value. It's so easy not to find stuff, and you'll never even know what you didn't find. Woo! Look at that quote, chat. That's one that's definitely going to be on Twitter pretty soon. When you got Ken Shoulders talking about exotic vacuum objects, and then all of a sudden he's just shitting on academia, you know this is a guy that knew some stuff, everybody. Okay. And then he basically talks about how it's very difficult to find funding in general. And this is another reason why I'm not going to read that part, but this is the suppression again. Is the suppression can also be monetary. If they don't fund you, then you can't research anything, you can't find anything, etc. Yeah, exactly. If no funding, then funding is not finding things because you're owned when you are bought, right? Pretty interesting. Okay, now let's go back. Okay, so the Ken Shoulders thing was really good. Let's take a look. Let's close that window. Now I want to read this one here. Whoever sent me this, I appreciate it. Also, I don't know, there's a little bit of drama on Twitter about Ashton stealing his research. For the record, I've never stolen anybody's research ever. When I amplified content in the early days, which was only for, 3 or 4 weeks, I always quoted who the person was who created it. If you just send me a link to something, that's not research. That's just publicly available information. If you do your own research and you want me to quote it, then I will do that, just so that we're perfectly clear. And if you message me bouncing ideas off of me, that's definitely not research either. And that's not something that's going to necessarily be credited. So if this confuses anybody that's out there, you're free to post your own content. And if I like your content, I will retweet it. So hopefully that's all understood. It's pretty funny when people try to argue that I stole stuff. It really goes, there's this level of jealousy at play on a lot of that stuff. Hey, Complizir, nice to see you, brother. Ash 4 Orbs, Housewares, Fire, Smiley Face. Is that robot wrestle arm? I didn't even know that was an emoji that was possible. Not sure what this means, chat, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much, man. Okay. Main idea I want to bounce off you is Skinny Bob. We had a Skinny Bob in our Discord, but I think he changed his name. Speaking of which, I'm going to put an invite to the Discord for people that want to join. Only rule is you don't troll. We rarely have occasions where we have problems, but sometimes we do. Also, keep the political stuff to a minimum. It's okay to rib at people here and there, but, let's keep sometimes we have some anti-Semitic stuff that crosses the line. So, just keep it casual, guys. It's a science Discord, investigative Discord. Okay, so there you go. There's the Discord. Okay. Infinite Energy website here. Issue 61, charge clusters. Let me see. Is there a way to make this bigger? That's probably better. Well, maybe like this. Let me see how that. Okay, this is probably best we're going to get here. Oh, it's one of these websites. Okay. That'll probably give you good. Real quick, do you ever revisit the letter to you, or is it fully understood? Well, I've listened to it about 50 times. The letter to Ashton Forbes, we've played it before, probably play it every few months. I think that letter was authentic in the sense that somebody sent that to me that wanted me to keep researching the science, and they were concerned that I was going to give up and stop researching it, which boils down who could have done it. It's not the work of a random person. Either it's a follower who's extremely well versed in the science that probably has inside information, or that was some intelligence community that sent that letter. It doesn't necessarily have to be American intelligence. In fact, it probably wasn't. It wouldn't surprise me if it was like Chinese intelligence that's been tracking and monitoring that knows the truth about the plane. And that's why you have to be careful, is they may have slipped stuff in there that is not exactly how it happened. But the letter to Ashton Forbes is very interesting. And if you are new to the case, just Google Diego Garcia whistleblower letter to Ashton Forbes, or look that up on my Twitter account. You can listen to the whole thing. It's 11 minutes long. I've listened to it 50 times. So there you go. Okay, so let's read this because this was really interesting. A cover article in this issue is all about charge clusters, which are compact groups of electrons. They defy the common belief that such things cannot occur because of the great repelling forces these electrons should exert on one another. Yet they do appear to exist and are not even that difficult to create once you know how. Ken Shoulders knows how and has been doing it for about 25 years. Ken and his son Steve experiment with charge clusters, also called exotic vacuum objects, or EVOs, in a well-equipped, privately funded lab in California. Ken has a history of working at the edge of science and engineering. He worked at SRI International for 10 years as a staff scientist and started a field now called vacuum nanoelectronics. We heard all of that, which is based on field emissions and active devices. He also worked at MIT. Ken's very qualified background has helped convince many people that the exotic vacuum object phenomenon is real, in spite of the difficulty in believing that electrons can form such clusters. Ken notes, nobody believed nobody believed anything ever said. They only believed the gadgets that were run by EVs. I actually had to almost beat the patent office into submission by a series of brutal assaults with my devices. Where does that sound familiar, guys? That's the exact same type of thing that Salvatore Pais mentioned with his Superforce, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later as well, is that a lot of people have this misconception that you can patent anything. That is not true. That is objectively not true. It's objectively a lie. You cannot patent anything. Patents must work, and you must convince the patent office that it is a feasible device. Otherwise, they will not accept your patent. Pretty incredible. I don't know why that's even controversial and where that disinformation is coming from. I think the disinformation comes from science deniers who don't want to believe that the stuff that is patented is out there is real, which is funny because you often hear people say, just patent it, and then that'll prove that it's real. And then the moment you patent it, they say, well, anything can be patented. Pretty funny. Not only are the clusters themselves exotic to mainstream science, but they also seem to offer a way of connecting to the most fundamental and universal elements in existence, sometimes called the ether. Hello? Oh, wait, let me find it. Where are we going to go with this one? Sometimes called the ether. Ken refers to this as the potentium, a name given by Joe Fromage. I think that what he means there is like the potential, essentially. Whatever the name, it is a little understood part of the universe that many agree is loaded with energy if we only knew how to tap into it. The EVO may be the fundamental connecting link. Ken considers it a kind of universal clutch, as it clutches the basic fabric of the universe by biasing the medium with a dense asymmetrical charge distribution. Yahtzee, chat. Yahtzee. Oh God, I got excited when I read that. This is a very powerful concept and may well be the foundation of any device that operates with an efficiency over unity. Boom! That is, I mean, this whole paragraph right here is just straight up money in the bank. Take it to the bank, everybody. Ding, 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 ding. Jackpot. That's exactly what I've been saying for how many months? Cold fusion, sonoluminescence, all these concepts are directly linked to the idea of free energy and the ether. In fact, they are connecting to it. And he even says one further. By the way, I had never read this before today. I didn't know any of this stuff was out there. Just to show you that, like, the stuff that I've been saying, it's mostly been coming from intuition, and then it just keeps getting confirmed by science that's already out there. This last part right here is probably the biggest thing. Ken considers it a kind of universal clutch, as it clutches the basic fabric of the universe by biasing the medium with a dense asymmetrical charge distribution. Guys, holy shit. What does that sound like? Asymmetrical charge distribution? A battery. Positive on the top, negative on the bottom. So basically what he's doing in this charged plasma, in this EVO, is they're creating an asymmetry of charges. And what's that doing? Creating a battery. Where does energy come from? From asymmetrical charge distribution. That's exactly where all energy comes from. Why does Ashton keep saying all energy comes from the ether? Because it does. Every circuit you have, not 1 watt of power has ever been added to it from burning fossil fuels or what have you. All that does is it works to keep the asymmetrical charge in place, our dipole in place. Asymmetrical charge is a dipole. So real quick, I want to play the Tom Bearden video just to remind you guys.
Generator powered the external circuit. It doesn't. It does not power it at all. All it does is we twist the crank on the generator, the shaft, to turn the shaft, and that forms a magnetic field inside the generator, and that energy in that magnetic field dissipates itself upon the internal charges to force the positive charges in one direction and negative charges in the other to make that dipole, and that's all a generator does. It doesn't add 1 watt to the power line. All the coal, all the oil, all the dams ever built, all the nuclear fuel rods ever consumed, never added 1 single watt to the power line. All they did was keep rebuilding the dipole that we have designed a silly circuit to destroy faster than we can power the loads.
Holy crap, I love it. The turbines spin to keep the door open for the energy to flow in. It's another good analogy. So now we understand how cold fusion really works. And once you understand how it really works, it's so simple. It's right there in front of us, chat. It's been in front of us this whole time, our entire lives. You create an asymmetrical charge distribution in your plasma, and now you just created a free energy device with just coherent plasma. Okay, this clutch apparently can operate in many environments. You know, hint there at underwater, in the air, in space. This is a matter of transmedium. EVOs are likely the source of the extremely high temperatures recently measured in collapsing bubbles forming cavitation. What is that? That's sonoluminescence right there. This is mentioning sonoluminescence. EVOs are the likely source of extremely high temperatures recently measured in collapsing bubbles formed by cavitation. You ready for another clip?
This is a conversion of vacuum energy into another form, in this case, light, heat, radio waves. So we know of a laboratory that has some experiments going in which they were creating turbulent bubbles in fluids and then measuring the energy in the water by the heat, and they were getting over unity efficiency.
He said it.
And so we have now arranged to have those devices shipped to our laboratory, and we're going to do a very detailed study. But in this case, we're talking about kilowatts of excess energy.
Not 1 watt.
Right, kilowatts.
How much do you guys have to see to be convinced? How is that not absolute proof? I just showed you 2 career-long black project engineers that have worked on private military contractors and with the government that literally just explain the exact same thing this paper is saying, the exact same thing that I've been saying, just straight up Yahtzee, chat. Yahtzee. Okay, temperatures as high as, I'm just going to reread the first part. EVOs are likely the source of extremely high temperatures recently measured in collapsing bubbles formed by cavitation. Exactly what Hal Puthoff just mentioned. Temperatures as high as 20,000 degrees Kelvin have been measured. Temperatures in this range need an exotic explanation, and EVOs exhibit extremely high temperatures. Sonofusion, talking about sonoluminescence there, is likely triggered by the same mechanism and may not really qualify as cold fusion. The destructive effects of cavitation on marine propellers have been known for over 150 years, but never explained satisfactorily. Likewise, the cavitation can occur in pumps. Remember heat pumps, guys? There have been many claims of over-unity performance in pumps designed to produce a lot of cavitation, but never enough to be useful as an energy source because the input is electrical and the output is heat at moderate temperatures. This is why people claim that heat pumps are over-unity, is that the heat pump design mechanism may actually be producing and tapping into the ether in a similar way. And the problem is, the reason why people don't think that, don't give it a lot of credit, is that it's taking electrical energy in and it's heat energy coming out. So because they don't match up, this is why you don't recognize it as over unity. I mean, yes, it's getting hotter in here, but how do I have to convert that to total energy to understand that it's actually over unity in that case? We are the change. Don't fall for the me love you long time bit. Stay frosty. Yeah, so we know the methods of suppression as well. So when the beautiful ladies start trying to sneak into my DMs or have me go dance with them when I go to Vegas pretty soon, I'm gonna have to be pretty careful. Don't want to get myself in any compromising positions. Okay. What was Ryan saying? I didn't see what Ryan was saying. Oh yeah, there's a patent. I don't. What's the patent, guys? What is this patent? I can't copy and paste it. I'm curious though. If anyone knows what that patent is, can you put the name of the patent in the thing instead of the link, or maybe both? That'd be helpful. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. Yeah, I mean, we do need to open the world's to the eyes, open the world's eyes to this, right? That's what this is all about, huh? Yeah, I'm probably going to get freaking roofied or something. Tesla is known to have been able to create what appeared to be ball lightning and even was able to let it touch him without harm. Ball lightning is probably a large charged cluster. It is not well understood, but can appear in lightning storms, coming and going in mysterious ways, sometimes quietly and sometimes with a great deal of commotion. Understanding charged clusters better may clarify some of Tesla's work, as well as give better understanding of the strange natural phenomenon. I have mentioned before, but that it may take several decades from now to market a useful over unity or free energy device. This part, I don't know when this was written, guys, but this felt like they were talking directly to me. Now, I want you guys to remember, a lot of people criticized me when I brought up the EtherTech magnetic motor and said, why aren't you open sourcing it? And I told people, because it's all been out there forever. No one's paying any damn attention. So doing that again isn't going to make a difference. I said, what I want to do is I want to commercialize it. And I guarantee you, I've never read this before. Earlier today, it was the first time I ever read this. Listen to what they say about free energy devices right here, guys. I have mentioned before that it may take many decades from now to market a useful over unity or free energy device. I base that on the work that Ken and others are doing on cutting edge of this science. Ken has been working on this problem for 25 years, and cold fusion / Leonard work has been going on for over 15. This is difficult work that requires a rare combination of creativity, persistence, energy, and attention to fine detail. It also involves the ability to improvise because lack of funding is all too often a thick skin to put up with unimaginative naysayers. On top of all this, the work can be dangerous. EVOs contain incredible energy potential for their size. It is not difficult to make them big enough to blow up a Labrador. Wait, where's the part that I wanted? Okay. The work today is much more science than engineering, though doing the science also involves considerable engineering. This is quite difficult from, maybe it's coming up a little bit later. Quite different from the engineering that goes on to the energy, into an energy machine that could be sold to the public as an appliance or to a utility as a generator. We are still a long way from that. Fundamental understanding needs to progress to the point where results are consistent, reliable, safe, and can be had at a reasonable expense. Only then can a product be engineered around the concept. This will take many years and many dollars. So right there, we're already talking about the idea of you need to understand how this works, and you need to be able to understand that you have to figure out how are you going to come up with a product that can be given to be used as an appliance or as a generator. This is the reason why I was so interested in the magnetic motor concept, because it fits that criteria. One of the more difficult problems in the new energy field is funding for good ideas. This is because of the very long time to market by conventional investment standards and because of the great difficulty of evaluation of the potential of the technology. This is another reason why I went with the person that I went with, because they had a device that was already produced and proven. A significant part of the evaluation problem is caused by the fact that most new energy concepts are either pure bunk or just on the wrong path. The very encouraging part of what Ken and Steve are doing is that they have the great credentials for understanding this work. The experimental techniques are very good and associated theory is sound, and the potential payoff of this is huge. This technology has the potential of being engineered to a very powerful, compact, and economical machine with endless variations and applications. There's still the problem of time to market. So now when you read this part and for these three, you can realize, like, why did I go with the person that I went with? Well, the same reasons that this person's talking about for related to Ken's shoulders. Now, a magnetic motor has some advantages over a cold fusion device. You're not really worried about the magnetic motor exploding on you as opposed to the cold fusion device. Investors who are inclined to take this kind of risk like to see the potential of making 30 to 40% annual returns. This is not only because they want to make a killing, but because so many ventures fail that each winner must support several complete losses. This means that even if an idea looks like it'll be worth $1 billion when developed, it may not be worth enough to an investor to put the required money in during the early phases of development. It is very realistic that given an idea from concept to product could take 20 years. If it is worth $1 billion in 20 years, it is now worth only $5.2 million discounted at a 30% rate and only $1.2 million discounted at a 40% rate. So that's just doing the math. And again, this is business. This is why I'm a business major. Is that when you look at it from this perspective, you go, oh, so this is why. People just think, oh, well, you'll instantly become a billionaire. That's not how the math works at all. And when people invest, they fail many times over. So they need the winners to make a lot of money. There needs to be like a guaranteed, this is going to make me money, and the faster it's going to make me money, the better. Since it will often take more than this to get traction with the idea, it is clear that even if the inventor sells his whole idea to the investor, he will not have enough money to do the work. Okay. Let's see. Oh, here we go. This is the part that I wanted. This is the last part. I'm going to skip these couple paragraphs. Infinite Energy's founding editor, the late Gene Malov, was an advocate for taking even a very simple device into market, even if it was just a toy, to generate interest and publicity. This is still a good idea, but even that modest goal is very elusive. I have lost track of the number of magnetic motors that people have gotten excited about, but have never heard a credible story about one that actually worked. A concerted effort is needed on a chosen technology to achieve Gene's goal. The EVO technology has promise of yielding very exciting results with fairly modest amount of funding. So this part is wild because this is exactly what my thought process was. Is you find something that's economical. It doesn't have to be producing 10,000 kilowatts. We need something that's practical, that can be put together easily, that can then have people realize that it's possible. And once people realize this technology is possible, what will happen? People will invest in it. People will start to come up with other concepts for it. This is the reason why I pushed for the magnetic motor. And contrary to what they said here, I've already shown a video that shows a magnetic motor showing with the meters tied to it over unity of over 2. What I'll say right now is the device that I've been working with has a higher over unity coefficient of performance than that. Okay. And I've seen videos of the device that I've been working with, and I've seen the meters as well. So that's all I'm going to say on that front. Now let's dig into Let's look at some plasma physics now. Okay, let's start with... Now, some of these papers are far too long for us to get through in this whole thing. As you can see, this is the one on... this is force-free time harmonic plasmoids. This is 1992. It's 31 pages. We're not going to be able to get through this whole thing. So instead, we'll just look at some parts of this in general. And we'll see where it takes us. Now, Jack Nachemkin here, this guy, I've seen him referenced in some of Hal Puthoff's work, and I've seen him referenced in some of Eric Davis's work as well. This is Air Force Command, Phillips Laboratory Propulsion Directorate. Notice Franklin Mead is listed on pretty much all of these papers as well. Frank Mead, the history of this guy is really interesting. And also he was linked to Kepler Aerospace as well. So now we're starting to see the connections out there. This world of this hidden technology is relatively small, and we're starting to realize who all the people are who are connected to one another. And this is something that I don't think I've seen a lot of people do. I would love to have a Ian Carroll style web of all the people and how they're connected to one another. Because you look at it and you're like, oh boy, so these people are the people in the know. I would bet you just about anything this Franklin Mead guy knows about some advanced technology that the world has no idea about. Okay, let's look at time harmonic force-free electromagnetic fields. And then maybe radiation and ideal plasmoids. Because when I look at this time harmonic force-free electromagnetic fields, I imagine we're talking about a ball of plasma here, but maybe not. Not sure. I actually haven't read through all this paper yet. I was trying to get through the other one, frankly. But you look at this right here. This already right here looks very similar to the concept of our orb from the MH370 video. And you can imagine if there's this heat signature going on this side. Oh, actually, you know what? We're going to look at a video first. Sorry, guys. I totally forgot about this video. We're going to watch this video first. We can do a little intermission and watch the video and then get back to some science.
Artist in Massachusetts. And I have the globe place it in the center of the coil. And now nothing's happening. And that's because we just have a magnetic field and it passes through the globe with no issue. So what I want to do is I want to try to create a concentration of charge, which I hope then will interact with the magnetic field and start to circulate inside the globe and form what I hope will be current streamers. And then eventually we'll be able to turn those current streamers into a stable floating toroid.
So he's going to use just a magnetic field here to create a plasma toroid right here. And it's going to look very similar.
So to do that, I'm going to use a technique called induction. I'm going to charge up this plastic wand and I'm going to bring it close. And what will happen is the opposite charge will form on the inside of the globe. And I'm hoping that'll concentrate enough of the charge where we'll get this started and we'll start to see some of those current streamers. So what I'm going to do is a very old technique of electricity generation. And tribo is just related to friction. So what I'm going to do is just use the friction of two materials to transfer charge from one to the other, one from the cloth, then to the wand. And now I'm going to bring this close to the globe. And there we are. And you can see there's a blue glow of the plasma, and this is xenon gas inside. And that's why it's white and not some other color. And we've got some streamers, and I can interact with the streamers. Now, this may look like a plasma globe. And many times you've played with it, you'll notice you can interact with it also. But this is quite different than a plasma globe. First off, in our globe, there is nothing. There's no ball with a stick inside that you may see in your plasma globe. And that ball is generating a high voltage, which creates the plasma in a plasma ball. Here, we have absolutely nothing inside except the xenon gas. Another big difference is we have this magnetic field by the coil. And the magnetic field is going to be key to shaping the current flow in the coil when we form the toroid. Now what I want to do is I want to see if I can get one of these streamers to fold back on itself, if you will, a snake.
So what he's doing here is he's using an electric charge from his finger or from whatever to basically cause these streamers to become coherent And once they become coherent, I mean, it's like, wow. And they become self-regulating, self-sustaining. Once the becomes a toroidal coherent stream of plasma, it doesn't get undone. It just stays like that. So you can imagine that if we're engineering it, all we need to do is we need to trigger that coherent toroidal plasma, and it's going to stay that way as long as we need it to stay that way. As long as we don't mess with the magnetic field, it's going to stay that way. So the part about making it into the toroid is just trivial. It can be done by any number of different processes. So here we go.
That eats itself. And if we can get that, I can probably establish a rotating current. And that rotating current tends to be very stable in this magnetic field, and all of the charge in the plasma inside will congregate and form a plasma toroid that is stable all by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the power up just a little bit. And then I'm just going to use my hands to see if I can get it to form a toroid.
Watch this.
Just a bit higher.
Whoa,
and there we
just
are.
like that. Ooh, wow.
You notice the streamers very quickly died away, and we formed this amazing self-sustained toroid.
Wow.
You can see
that part is just incredible. That's slow motion. Watch this.
We formed this amazing.
Look how you can see it already starting to form right here, and then just instantly coherent.
Self-sustained toroid. You can see it has a little bit of a wobble.
And look at that like reflection off the glass right there with this half dome. Also looks really, really similar to what we see with both the plasma physics model from the Department of Energy and from the MH370 Orb as well.
But if you look at it from the side,
doesn't mean this is exactly what they were dealing with there, but it's probably very similar.
You can see it's just floating, and it's floating and controlled by the magnetic field. The current is circulating around it, and
it's free floating, suspended in air as well.
Magnetic field is shaping it. And I can actually adjust the magnetic field
now watch this, because now you can manipulate the magnetic field as well
by turning the power up and down. And I can actually have it float towards the top and eventually disappear. And that is the amazing plasma toroid. It float towards the top.
Look at this.
And eventually disappear. And that is the amazing plasma toroid.
Absolutely incredible, guys. Okay. And yeah, I forgot about the smoke ring stuff. I don't have anything lined up for the or queued up for the smoke ring stuff at the moment. Let me put this into my Discord. Plasma toroid. Okay, and then I'm going to close this. Now let's go back to this. We're going to come back to this how to make a black hole thing in a minute. Okay. So let's read a little bit of science now and see if we can figure out what page is that? 5? Okay. Plasma. So this is some math on the plasma. Let's see if we can get some understanding of how it works. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, this is all the hard math related to it. I thought this was going to be okay. Before discussing electric charge carriers and the conditions for overall stability, the question of radiation can be addressed. The assumption to be made is that plasmoids will form in such a manner that the electric and magnetic fields will be tangent to the surface boundary. The rationale for this will become clear when the fluid velocities are introduced. A self-consistent, stable plasmoid cannot have a component of velocity normal to its surface. Since the velocity field to be introduced will be identical in form to the electric and magnetic fields, the conclusion is reached that the electromagnetic fields must be tangent to the plasmoid surface. Only spherical plasmoids will be discussed, but the results are easily extended to cover possible non-spherical cases. Okay, instead of going to the extensive mathematical proofs, which is done elsewhere and in Appendix A, analogy will be made to the field inside a perfectly conducting spherical cavity, excited at a transverse electric resonance frequency. So perfectly conducting is what? Superconductor. And then resonance frequency. That would be for like a standing wave, probably. In a TE resonance, the electric vector has no radial component and must therefore be zero at the surface of the cavity. The condition for the resonance is vanishing of the total electric field and the normal component of the magnetic field at the cavity surface. Okay, I kind of want something that's a little bit more readable. But here you go. You can see your spherical plasmoid right here. Let me see if I can search here. Okay. There's no model. You know what? We're going to switch over to the other paper, which I think is going to be a little bit better. Yeah, okay, here we go. Actually, this was just talking about the exact same one from before. So this paper, I'll go back to the top after I read through this force-free harmonic plasmoids, because he's actually referencing Nachamankin. I don't know how to say his name. I'm probably butchering it. And this is by Eric Davis, and this is the ball lightning study here by Eric Davis. Also has Frank Mead listed on it as well. Okay, so Nachamankin proposed a physics model for a long-lived, high-energy density spherical resonant plasmoid in terms of a time harmonic solutions of Maxwell's equations, wherein the electric and magnetic fields are parallel to each other and both have the force-free form, and a time harmonic electric current field also have the force-free form accompanies these. This means that the functional forms of the time-varying electric, magnetic, and current vector fields are identical within a constant phase and factor. This model essentially describes a force-free time harmonic standing electromagnetic wave trapped in a stabilizing plasma vortical mode. Turns out I was right. It is a standing electromagnetic wave. So you have this wave trapped in here, and now we've got essentially a ball of plasma, charged plasma that's stuck. This model is an attempt to combine Kapitza's standing wave plasmoid model with Wells' model of a vortical field that is identical to the component of an electromagnetic field. A critical resonance frequency, depending on the size of the plasmoid, was derived such that below this frequency, the time harmonic current cannot be carried by the plasma electrons and the plasmoid decays. While above this frequency, local perturbations of the current tend to increase the plasma total energy, leading to its stabilization. The fields in the current-carrying plasma electrons induce electromagnetic stresses that can be balanced by reducing pressures arising from the vortical fluid motion of the supporting plasma. The pinch effect due to the time-varying electric fields adds to the plasmoid stability. The plasma velocity field of the vortical motion also has a force-free form such that its functional form is identical to, within a constant phase and factor, the forms of the electric and magnetic and current fields. At a resonant size, the free space time harmonic fields have parallel electromagnetic fields over the surface of the spherical plasmoid, hence making this internal-external fields continuous at the plasmoid boundary, and thus eliminating surface currents. Okay, let's see what else we got. Okay, let's look at, this is going to get a little bit too interesting here, though. Actually, it says description of the apparatus. The plasma vortex rings are generated by a conical zero pinch, aka a punch coil plasma gun, which is an induction pinch with a cone-shaped single turn coil. This is essentially what is also called an electrodeless plasma gun. A 15 kilojoule capacitor bank with an operating maximum voltage of 25 kilovolts energizes the gun, although these values can be changed as described. So just from right here, now I'm pretty sure that we've got some kind of plasma weapons, guys. We've probably got a plasma weapon. So now plasma cannon, that's literally what he's describing right here. And that's what this looks like right here. Here's what we got, literal plasma guns, chat. So that's how we might be able to like shoot this out. So people wonder, where can these come from? They can probably come from anywhere, because these are going to be whatchamacallit? Jesus. Multimedium. What am I working for? Transmedium. Transmedium is the word I'm looking for. What was the thing? Somewhere in here it mentions monopole. Maybe here. Yeah, okay. I want to read this part too. Okay, plasmoid and plasma vortex ring. This is a class of models describing BL, as in ball lightning, as a closed loop current produced at the instant of the thunder discharge within a plasmoid producing magnetic self-containing field. Sounds familiar, guys? A self-containing magnetic field? Plasmoids were first discovered by Bostic in 1956 to be equilibrium configurations of a compact geometric structure composed of plasma whose form and stability is determined by the magnetic field it carries along with itself. Interesting. In order for the lifeline of this ball lightning model to be long enough to match the observations, the plasma energy density must be high, must have really high plasma energy density. Many theoretical and experimental investigations were done on a plasma vortex ring phenomenon. Shafranov was the first to explore this concept for ball lightning by analyzing equilibrium conditions for bounded plasmas in a magnetic field. The usual structure of plasmoids is that of a vortex ring comprising of an axially symmetrical ring, or torus. That's what we were just looking at, with helical currents. It is assumed in these models that the internal energy of the ball lightning derives from the ion recombination process. Wooding in 1963 followed up on this theme. So also you guys are realizing how old is this? Yeah, 9 years after Roswell. So somebody's paying attention here. We're talking about the late 50s and the 60s. This was 60, 70 years ago, guys. This is a long time ago. The conditions necessary for stable equilibrium of plasmoids are defined by the virial theorem. Work done by Finkelstein and Rubinstein on plasmoid stability in the atmosphere showed that an internal energy, stability, and lifetime machine ball lightning properties could be determined. The applicability of the virial theorem to these models impacting the estimated plasmoid lifetimes versus observed ball lightning lifetimes has been the source of heated debate amongst investigators. In spite of this, there's experimental evidence showing that plasmoids have sustainably greater lifetimes than those found in plasmas without self-containment. Many other variations of the plasma ring theme vortex have been proposed. Now, the reason why there's so much drama, I can already tell, because he says here why this has been a heated debate. And the reason is because people don't think there's enough energy to be able to pull it off. How could you have this sustained ball of plasma that's just sitting up there, and how is it coherent? Well, we just heard the answer earlier, right? Asymmetrical charge. What's the asymmetrical charge doing? It's extracting energy from the ether. That's how it's self-sustaining. How can a ball of plasma just seem to float around for hours and hours on end? Because where's the energy coming from? Coming from the ether. The ether has unlimited energy. The question you should ask yourself from this is, how is the sun up there producing fusion for as long as it is, for billions and billions of years? Because the sun is a giant ball of plasma. A giant ball of plasma. This is why it's stable while it sits up there as well, for as long as they are. Otherwise, how can the sun really last for billions and billions of years? Does that really make sense to you? Okay. So here's some models where they talk about it. I thought that one of these mentioned magnetic monopoles, but maybe I've missed it. I'm just going to do a Control F and see if I can find it. There we go. Okay. Okay. The combined elements of observed and inferred properties together form the mean phenomenological model for a ball lightning. Many investigators have attacked the problem of forming a ball lightning model hypothesis using different approaches. The varied published hypotheses tend to explain the nature of ball lightning as a whole, or they treat it as separate aspects, or they do both. Ball lightning research remains an immature discipline even after almost 200 years of discussion within the scientific community. This is largely because there's still no consensus on the physical mechanism responsible for the phenomenon. Different concepts for physical mechanisms have been proposed and categorized, and there's a significant overlap that occurs between many of the concepts within the categories. The various concepts that are proposed are strictly based on the presently known scientific principles of physics, chemistry, meteorology, etc. However, a significant fraction of the theoretical literature can best be described as rubbish. This is so because the continuing lack of conclusive scientific explanation for ball lightning has led to the consideration of many exotic speculative theories co-opted from other areas of science. These include are not limited to such concepts as magnetic monopoles, exotic states of quantum, superconducting, degenerate Bose-Einstein condensates, lattice vortex superfluids, fermionic or bosonic vortices, etc. Matter, micrometers or of antimatter, micro black holes, exotic sonoluminescence, Rayburn matter, cosmic ray focusing, radioactive air, etc. These exotic theories are unrealistic or contradictory because they fail to reproduce most or even some of the defined ball lightning phenomenology, whatever, within the context of both the observed and anyway. So he's trying to poo-poo on some of this stuff. And actually mentions Puthoff here having done some novel manifestations of it in the lab right here. And then he talks about some of the experiments. Now, in my opinion, magnetic monopoles are going to be the way to do it. And you're also going to use possibly Bose-Einstein condensate as well as micro black holes. Those are the ways where I think that we're able to pull this off, just from my understanding of it. And I don't think it's unrealistic at all. But now that we've seen that, let's take a quick look at this patent right here. Method and apparatus to coherently combine high powerful beams into a self-imaging waveguides. And when we look at the image over here on the right, you can see here that this looks like you're crossing the beams to produce a very powerful beam at the top here or at the bottom. And in this is a Lockheed Martin Coherent Technologies application, an apparatus for combining laser beams into a single high-powered output beam. The apparatus includes self-imaging waveguide with parallel reflective elements that have a length that is an integer multiple of the self-imaging or Talbot lengths of the waveguide, or an integer blah, 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 I don't know. The apparatus also includes a system for controlling the phase of each laser beams provided to an inlet of the waveguide. I mean, to me, this is exactly what you need, basically, to create to have your laser zap to basically create a black hole. Now, why do I say that? And this patent is from 2007. Looks like it's when it was approved. So in order to produce this, some people, when CERN came online, we were worried that CERN was going to create black holes. Why? Because they're taking extremely high energy photons and they're blasting them against each other. And what is a laser beam but a concentrated focus of photons? You could argue that a laser beam is essentially a miniature scaled down particle accelerator, in fact. And so what we need to have happen is we need our photons to hit the exact right location at the exact right time, right? Because what we want is, imagine you have, take a road, a busy road, okay? So I've got this busy road filled with cars. And now I'm going to take another road perpendicular to it, also filled with cars. And they're going past one another. Well, eventually, one car is going to hit the other. But in many situations, one car is just going to pass through right through the other one. This is going to be the same problem that we have with our lasers. So what we want to have happen is we want the cars to consistently crash into one another every single time. But we're doing this with photons, which move at the speed of light. So how do we make sure that our photons are going to crash into each other? Well, one way we do it is that we make sure we have extreme precision control over our photons. Now, what is precision control over our photons? How about attosecond lasers? An attosecond laser is basically extreme control to the minute level over your photons in your laser beam. This is why attosecond lasers won the Nobel Prize, because now we have this extremely minute control. Exactly. not necessarily do it by eye because it's too fast. But if you can control your laser to a degree where you have it precise down to the attosecond, which is 10 to the minus 18 zeros. Now you have a situation where you can have those photons hit exactly. And probably the faster that you can get your laser down from attosecond to whatever is after attosecond, even better. There's most likely a relationship between the total power that you can generate and how quickly you can make, how better you can make your laser in terms of the attosecond, the fastest one possible basically out there. So now I want to go over to this other clip. This is a clip by Sabrine Hassenfelder, who, respect to her, like, she's on the right track, but she's still got too much mainstream bullshit that she was taught. Otherwise, she'd have figured this out, I feel like. I still have hope for her. I think she'll eventually figure it out.
Wait. Einstein said that mass is really a type of energy, and energy also has a gravitational pull.
So this right here, guys, this is when I had my Yahtzee moment about the black hole. Einstein said that mass is actually energy. E equals mc squared. This means that mass is energy, and that energy has a gravitational pull. So gravitational pull of your energy. So this means that we don't need mass to create our black hole. We can do it with energy. What is a laser? A laser is high-powered energy, bosons. So you're stacking, a laser is basically photons stacked on top of one another. So you're stacking your energy up into a fine point. And bosons can all be in the same spot in space at the same time. So remember, what's the difference between a boson and a fermion, guys? I'll take my Coke bottle. Coke bottle is made of fermions, which means that all the atoms in here are in a different place in space and time. That's why it has structure like this, and I can sip on it. Bosons collapse onto a single point. That's a laser beam. So now we understand the concepts. So we needed an ability to produce a huge amount of energy. Well, the best way to do that is a laser, because that's literally what a laser beam is. And then now what we want is we need precision control over a very, very specific microscopic location for our energy. It needs to be trapped within something called the Schwarzschild radius. The Schwarzschild radius is the area inside the event horizon of the black hole. So we need this tiny little location. I probably shouldn't be doing these weird symbols. The conspiracy theory people are going to go nuts on me. I'm trying to make a little circle. So like, let's imagine this is much smaller, and we need our photons to hit inside this Schwarzschild radius to produce an energy within this area that's strong enough to produce our black hole.
Yes, that guy again. Doesn't this mean if we want to create a black hole, we can just speed up particles to really high velocity so that they have a high energy and then bang them into each other? For example, with a really big collider? Indeed, we could do this, but even the biggest collider we have built so far, which is currently the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, is nowhere near reaching the required energy to make a black hole. Let's just put in the numbers. In the collisions at the LHC, we can reach energies about 10 TeV. That corresponds to a Schwarzschild radius of about 10 to the minus 50 meters.
So she mentions the Schwarzschild radius. So now it's just a matter of math at this point. We know it's possible. You just heard a physicist say, yes, it's possible. We just don't have enough energy. Even the Large Hadron Collider cannot do it. Well, I've got a spoiler for you guys. You don't need a giant collider that's miles and miles in radius. You don't need that. We can amplify energy. This is the part where people don't realize it. So instead of making this large collider, there's a better way. Use resonance, pulses and resonance. So what's the concept that we have forgotten about, that we have talked about? Remember when you break a glass, a wine glass, or using a tuning fork? The concept of a tuning fork. You use your tuning fork and you can put it against a wine glass. And what happens with the wine glass? The structural integrity begins to break down. And then it shatters. We use that same concept with our lasers. We get to a resonance, a pulsed resonance. Boom, 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 boom. And we are just zapping it at each other to create a resonance. And then we're going to have cold fusion begin to form. Resonance is the key. That's the element that I think mainstream physics doesn't really apply enough, honestly.
But the region in which the LHC compresses this energy is more like 10 to the minus 19 meters. We're far, far away from making a black hole. So why were people so worried 10 years ago that the LHC might create a black hole? This is only possible if gravity doesn't work the way Einstein said. If gravity, for whatever reason, would be much stronger on short distances than Einstein's theory predicts, then it would become much easier to make black holes. And 10 years ago, the idea that gravity could indeed get stronger on very short distances was popular for a while. But there's no reason to think this is actually correct. And as you've noticed, the LHC didn't produce any black holes.
So, could you guys hear that? Hopefully you guys could still hear that. Anyway, so you guys could probably hear it. Anyway, so as usual, Sabrine does really well, and then she just immediately goes to debunker mode. She likes to straddle the line on there in general. Mainstream physics doesn't seem to realize there's a time delay between creating disequilibrium and Einstein's tensors rebalancing the space. Yeah, this is a great comment. Salvatore Pais, if you go listen to, I don't know if it was Hard Truths number 1 or Hard Truths number 4, but in one of them, he mentions this idea of tenderizing your steak. He says you just keep hammering on it, and then it breaks apart, and it becomes out of equilibrium at that point. That's what we want to do with our lasers. Pulse the lasers together, have them hit every single time in a very small area region. And what's going to end up happening? We're going to bum, 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 boom, break out equilibrium. And as we saw from the toroidal structure, once we have this coherent shape, it stays in that coherent shape, it becomes self-sustaining. Pretty neat. Okay, so let's switch over to, I'm going to close this video out. Let's go back to this real quick. Because let's go back to an oldie but a goodie. What else does Lockheed Martin have? Systems and methods for generating coherent matter wave beams. 2011. Systems and method for generating coherent matter wave beam are provided. In some aspects, the system includes a plurality of beam generating units. Each of the plurality of beam generating units is configured to generate a stream of charged particles. The system also includes a magnetic field generator configured to expose the plurality of streams to a magnetic field such that the charged particles of the plurality of streams undergo phase synchronization with one another in response to a vector potential associated with the magnetic field. And the plurality of streams is directed along one or more channels to combine with one another and produce a coherent matter wave beam. So when I read this, I think that this is basically what we would need to funnel our laser beams through to be able to produce the exact types of effects we need for our ball lightning. And then you notice the size on this, which is something I've mentioned before, 10 microns across. Why doesn't this show up? How come I'm showing the wrong? Oh, I'm showing the wrong one here. Hold on. 10 microns across. One other thing I want to tell you guys about is actually smaller is better for a lot of this. Because when you start to deal with physics at this level, we want to have stuff confined within a very, very small area. So it's actually the counter of what we expect. We don't want to scale up. We want to scale down. We want to be working at the smallest scales possible, because where this energy comes from, especially with respect to the 0-point energy, is at the Planck scale. The Planck scale is like the smallest possible scales that we know of on the quantum level. So the smaller, the better when it comes to this stuff, guys. Okay, so there's that as well. There's our coherent matter wave beam. And then now I want to get into So now we've talked about laser beams, and you can already imagine the concepts of, okay, well, it's just a matter of the energy levels and the precision and the harmonic resonance that we can achieve. So again, when I was calling things superconductive harmonic orbs, this was back in September of last year before I knew anything about science. I was calling the MH370 videos superconductive harmonic orbs. That is what they are. Like, no wonder the engineers wanted to talk to me. They're like, how the hell is this guy coming up with this? Like, did this guy just get a fucking download from some blue aliens? Because otherwise, like, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for how I could figure that out just intuitively looking at it. Because we're dealing with charged matter, perfectly conductive charged matter. We are dealing with harmonics, resonance as well. And it's an orb. It's a exotic vacuum object. I didn't even know what exotic vacuum object was a year ago. So this is the reason why people, I guess, had faith in me, and why even I wonder, like, this is, if there is a spiritual aspect to this whole thing, like we are, like our consciousness is like manifesting our reality. Well, you could get pretty close to convincing me here, because it's weird even for me. Okay. Yeah, some people would say intuition is kind of like a download. That's why I think that some people that mention stuff like they got a download, you know, you could say, like, where is the line on that? I'm not really a person that believes in that. I don't think somebody told me this information. I've just done a lot of work to research it. And more I look into it, the more and more at this point, I'm 100% sure this stuff is real, because look at all this science. All these extremely, extremely smart people. Ken Shoulders went to MIT. And he even talks about all the stuff that we've been talking about, down to the T, even down to the suppression as well. Absolutely. So when people talk about the spiritual aspect, I think you can't think of it from the normie people think of the spiritual aspect like ghosts and goblins. You know, when we talk about the spiritual aspect, you go like, how weird is it that this guy was able to figure out just by looking at these videos, the science, and then turns out all that science is real. That's the spiritual aspect, in my opinion. So now let's do some debunking. Okay, so we're going to try to debunk it. What do we have here? We have a nice little article here. So one of my friends sent me this, and I will say it's somebody that you guys know, because they wanted us to review. This is from January 26, 2024 here. Black holes cannot be created by light. This puts a damper on our understanding of the stuff. So let's read it the best we can. I mean, when it gets to some of the deep science here, I can't really go into that, but we're going to talk about the concepts for sure. The formation of a black hole from light alone is permitted by general relativity, but a new study says quantum physics rules it out. Black holes are generally known to form from large concentrated mass, such as burnt out stars, but according to general relativity, they can also form from ultra intense light, which would be known as what? A laser. Theorists have speculated about this idea for decades. However, calculations by a team of researchers now suggest that light-induced black holes are not possible, after all, because quantum mechanics causes too much leakage of energy for the collapse to begin. The extreme density of mass produced by a collapsed star can curve spacetime so severely that no light entering the region can escape. The formation of a black hole from light is possible according to general relativity, because mass and energy are equivalent. So the energy in an electromagnetic field can curve spacetime. So right there, the energy in the electromagnetic field can curve spacetime. So this is huge, because we don't need mass. We don't need mass, and we don't need negative mass to produce gravitational effects. All we need now is energy. This is the reason why in Eric Davis's papers on wormholes, he talks about mass energy, because they're interchangeable. Putative electromagnetic black holes have become popular, known as the, Kugelblitz. Built what, I don't know what this is, man. Why do all the words have to be in German? Anyway, known for ball lightning. So right here, they connect the idea of an electromagnetic black hole to ball lightning, which is the thing that we've been talking about all night tonight so far. So right here, this is the thing that we need. which now I'm already getting skeptical of the paper because we've already seen ball lightning. We know it's possible. We're staring at it in 2 videos. Unless some hoaxer came up with something that basically no one in the world even knew about, except for some small people in the UFO community, and they built it with a heat signature in it consistent with this type of effect that we're dealing with right here related to lasers. But now this paper in 2024, 10 years later, is trying to say that it's not possible due to quantum mechanics. So what should we do? Because we're critical thinkers. We're going to look at what their rationale is. What quantum mechanics is it that says that it can't do that? And we're going to look that up and see if we notice anything interesting about it. Okay. Okay. I'll just read through the rest of this. There's not too much, is there? Okay, no, there's not too much. We'll just read through the rest of this real quick. The Krugelblitz, whatever the hell, have previously been enlisted for speculative theories describing exotic physical phenomenon ranging from dark matter to cosmic censorship. The hypothesis that the singularity within the black hole is never visible, light-induced black holes have even been proposed as a means of propulsion for starships. But the question remains, are they truly possible? The problem is the electromagnetic field strengths thought to be necessary would generate many quantum particles. Those are our virtual particles, as highly concentrated photons may disintegrate spontaneously into electron-positron pairs in a process known as the Schwinger effect. Does the Schwinger effect ring any bells for anyone out there? If you guys have been watching my Hard Truths podcast from last year, you would know that Salvatore Pais mentions the idea that we can break something called the Schwinger limit. Maybe that's the quantum effect that we need to go look up. These particles, accelerated by intense electromagnetic fields, would then stream out from the region, carrying away energy. The question is then whether the gravitational collapse would still be possible, or whether energy loss resulting from the Schwinger effect would undermine it. Mathematical physicist Jose Polo Gomez of the University of Waterloo in Canada and his colleagues have carried out the calculations. The amount of electromagnetic energy that must be concentrated within a given spherical volume to form a Kugelblitz is easily calculated, blah, blah, blah. The hard part the problem is to estimate the energy dissipation from the Schwinger effect, in particular, how the time scale for the particular escape compares to the time collapse of the black hole. So the faster that we can create the black hole, the less this effect is going to have an impact, which again should go back to attosecond lasers, because there's this time derivative now that becomes very important. We don't want to just have 2 constant beams flowing. We need these things to collapse at the exact right second, at the exact right fraction of a second, down to the 10 to the minus 18. One of the main challenges is accounting for the way that the particle production feedbacks on itself, because the particles generate electric fields that influence the creation of more particles. Okay, I think that, Polo Gomez and his colleagues find that the Schwinger effect does indeed dissipate the energy of electromagnetic fields before the Kugelblitz can form at all sizes from 10 to the minus 29, very, very small, all the way up 10 to the 8. This is very, very large. So basically he's saying that this isn't possible at all based on quantum mechanics, because that's everything from extremely tiny microscopic black holes to giant black holes. Now this is where there should be giant red flags. Where is it? Somewhere in here it mentions somewhere in here that black holes of this size already exist. I'm looking for where it says that. Maybe I just missed it. Okay. I don't know exactly where it is, but somewhere in here it mentions that black holes of this size exist. We've already seen them out there. So then the question is, how are those black holes forming if they're not forming from energy? If you just told me that it's not possible because quantum effects cause them to dissipate too quickly, then how can we see them out there? We are already seeing them. And they said, well, that's just because other black holes are combining to form those black holes into supermassive black holes. I don't know, maybe. Okay, so then here's the scientific paper. I don't think, maybe it was in the scientific papers where it says that. Okay, I'm just going to read the conclusions from the scientific paper. We show that it's not possible to generate a black hole out of the gravitational collapse of electromagnetic radiation in the range and length scales from 10 to the minus 29 and 10 to the 8. To reach this conclusion, we studied the rate at which electromagnetic energy can be focused on a spherical region of a certain radius, the Schwarzschild radius, when a constant inward flux is applied. There's our magnetic monopole. While part of it is leaked away due to the particle-antiparticle pairs created in the process via the Schwinger effect. Our analysis indicates that the power needed to form a Kugelblitz is 10 orders of magnitude above what can be achieved in any realistic scenario, both in the laboratory and in the astrophysical setups. Now that's interesting because it says not just the laboratory, but even in outer space. Moreover, we show that the approximations incurred in this analysis do not affect the regimes where our conclusions apply. Furthermore, even if one only trusts the estimates of the models to some extent, the predicted orders of magnitude are so vastly unrealistic as to make this study a very compelling argument against the viability of the Kugelblitz, both artificially or a naturally occurring phenomenon. Now, the moment you start trying to claim that naturally occurring phenomenon cannot happen, and the fact that we already see black holes of that size that are up there, you should question whether or not there really is validity to this. The other part is this is a model. This is not an experimental result either. So these are just models that they've done. There's no experiment that they ran related to this, which I'm also skeptical of that as well. But the other thing is he says that it is possible, but we would need energy levels 10 orders of magnitude, 10 to the 10, higher than what we have currently available. Now, what does this remind you of? This here reminds me of Salvatore Paez's interview I did with him where he mentions the superforce, and he mentions that the patent office didn't think it was possible to achieve energy densities of 10 to the 33. If our lasers, for example, can only achieve energy densities of 10 to the 22, and we can actually achieve energy densities of 10 to the 32 or higher, then all of that scientific paper that we just read is now null and void, and it can literally just be thrown out because their math shows that if you can achieve energy densities that are as high as what Salvatore Paez mentioned, then it is possible. What is Ryan saying? Which further implies you don't need massive energy. You just need to apply less energy for longer. Yeah, that could be as well. So let's look at the paper, some of the science related to this so that we understand it a little bit better. Oh, I think this is where I found I think one of these is where I saw the idea of monopole. Okay. Bring this back up. Okay. Yeah, big shout out to Salvatore Paez and his superforce. So the concept of the superforce as well, guys, is the force of unification of all the other forces. And I think that it's related to the Zitterbuergong, which is this vibration, this movement at the smallest possible scales that are out there. If we think of the ether as this infolded dimension at the tiniest scales, and this is where all the energy is, they call it the quantum foam or whatever the hell they want to call it these days, then the superforce is what gives rise to the phenomenon that we need. The same phenomenon that we've been talking about with respect to the ball lightning, the ball plasma that's able to produce over unity, is that you can imagine that the superforce is the explanation for how we get that energy out of those small scales into this realized form. And I am going to be posting more probably tomorrow or the next day about Dirac holes. And there's another scientific paper I found about this that basically says that all the energy that's out there, all this energy in the ether is in the form of negative energy. And when we realize it into our local space-time, it goes from being negative energy to being positive energy. And then what's left behind is this Dirac hole that's left behind. This connects everything that we've been talking about. And it also mentioned, this paper also mentions the idea that the vacuum, the 0-point vacuum, is not nothing, and that it can actually be reduced below absolute zero as we understand it. And then that is our negative energy as well, which is exactly what I've been saying this whole time. So we've got some pretty amazing science that's popping out here pretty soon, guys. Okay, so what is the Schwinger effect? The Schwinger effect is a predicted physical phenomenon whereby matter is created by a strong electromagnetic or electric field. It is also referred to as the Sauter-Schwinger effect, Schwinger mechanism, or Schwinger pair production. It is a prediction of quantum electromagnetic in which electron-positron pairs are spontaneously created in the presence of an electric field, thereby causing the decay of the electric field. The effect was originally proposed by Fritz Sauter in 1931, and then whatever, it was until 1951 when Julian Schwinger gave the complete theoretical description. The other thing that I think about related to this as well is the dynamic Casimir effect. Remember, the dynamic Casimir effect was able to take virtual particles and create real photons out of them using moving mirrors or another effect similar to that related to, I think they use semiconductors and then an insulator. The Schwinger effect can be thought of as a vacuum decay in the presence of an electric field. Although the notion of the vacuum decay suggests that something is created out of nothing, physical conservation laws are nevertheless obeyed. To understand this, note that the electrons and positrons are each other's antiparticles with identical properties except for the opposite electric charge. So what they're saying here is if these things are coming out of nowhere, how is this even possible? That's because when you add it up, you have +1 and -1. And you add them up, you get 0. So you still have conservation in that situation. This is the same reason why free energy is conservated as well, is that in free energy, we are extracting negative energy and we are getting out positive energy. So the total energy exchange is still 0, even though locally here, we're getting free energy that we can use to power everything we have inside our house. To me, it's funny that it's even controversial. Because at this point, like if you understand the science, you understand we're not breaking the laws of thermodynamics. So to conserve energy, the electric field loses energy when the electron-positron pair is created by an amount equal to 2m, the mass of the electron times the speed of light squared, where m is the electron rest mass and c is the speed. Okay, that's what I just said. Electric charge is conserved because the electron-positron charge is neutral. That's what I just said as well. Guys, apparently I'm understanding physics better than I thought. Okay, so let's go down to this part. Okay, so the idea here, though, is that if we're creating these electron-positron pairs, we're losing some energy. And so presumably what this paper is saying is that you're producing all these electron-positron pairs, and now you're losing this energy. And theoretically, it's a matter of time now. Because if you're producing that, you basically need to beat the clock. You need your black hole to form and become self-coherent before you lose all that energy. So to me, the answer is just a matter of you need to have it as fast as possible so that you can beat this mechanism. And if you can beat that mechanism and you can achieve energy levels that are fast enough, and this is what that paper basically said, which is if you increased your energy levels, then theoretically you could create your black hole before you lose the energy to the pair particle creation. And if that happens, now you've beaten that paper. But that paper says, no, it's not realistic to achieve energy densities of that level. But that paper also probably doesn't believe in free energy either. So they're missing one of the main aspects related to this, which is why we started with Ken Shoulder's work today. Because exotic vacuum objects are the unification of cold fusion and over unity to the ether as well. How? Because we create our asymmetrical capacitor or asymmetrical dipole. Okay. Whew. Let's see what else we got here. The original Schwinger effect of quantum electrodynamics has never been observed due to the extremely strong electric field strengths required. Pair production takes place exponentially slowly when the electric field strength is much below the Schwinger limit, corresponding to about 10 to the 18 volts per meter. With current and planned laser facilities, this is an unreasonably strong electric field strength, so various mechanisms have been proposed to speed up the process and therefore reduce the electric field strength required for observation. Now, I mentioned the Schwinger limit here as well. So this may be the other way around it. Now, you can start to see there's a connection here because Salvatore Pais mentioned to us several times that the patent office didn't think that we could break the Schwinger limit. And he said we can break the Schwinger limit. So maybe the answer here between all of this is we can produce energy levels higher than what that paper and what the fundamental physics thinks. And if we can do that, now we can produce a black hole. Now we can break the Schwinger limit and then space-time becomes nonlinear. We're going to take a quick look at that as well. I have that one queued up right next to me. And even if you guys don't understand this, a lot of what this is, and I'm speaking from personal experience right here, is learning the same concepts and what these same terms are over and over and over, having them repeated into your head. I didn't know what the Schwinger limit was a year ago. I didn't know what the Casimir effect was a year ago. And you start to realize these same concepts are some of the core fundamental physics concepts of all of this science that's going out there. And this is how we know free energy is real. This is why a lot of people that they want to think that we have aliens and warp drives and space travel and wormholes, but they don't want to believe in free energy because they were told that free energy is not possible. Well, sorry, guys. It's all linked together. You get one and the other. There's no separating them. And that's why I posted earlier today about the 0-point energy related to the email correspondence between Edgar Mitchell and John Podesta. Because John Podesta was advisor to 2 different presidents. And Edgar Mitchell's just casually telling him we need to get disclosure of 0-point energy out to the world. Okay. Wow. Why is Edgar Mitchell talking about that? What convinced Edgar Mitchell that 0-point energy was possible, right? Yeah, and once you've learned it, you've figured it out, to Alan's point here. So even if some of you guys who are watching this don't understand it right away, even if you just remember these concepts, you're going to see them popping up time and time and time again. And what we'll see is there's going to be more and more scientific papers that are going to come out, and they're going to be mentioning these concepts. And that's what makes it easier to understand the next scientific paper. I've only been doing this for 9 months, and I'm already don't even recognize the person I was in last November. So it doesn't take nearly as long as you guys think. Okay, let's keep going. The pair rate of production may be significantly increased by time-dependent electric fields. As such, it is being pursued by high-intensity laser experiments, such as the Extreme Light Infrastructure. I have no idea what that is. Let's take a quick look at that. What is this? It's a research organization with the world's largest collection of high-powered lasers. Well, that sounds spicy. ELI operates several high-power, high-repetition laser systems which enable research of physical, chemical materials, and medical sciences. Where is it based? The Prague and one in Hungary. Interesting. Okay, that's enough. Okay, by electromagnetic duality, another possibility is to include a highly charged nucleus, which itself produces a strong electric field. A highly charged nucleus. So now we're starting to see there's probably a connection here between our ball of plasma, which is really just a charge, a strong charge. And what else did Ken Shoulders say? Ken Shoulders said that we can get a bunch of negatively charged particles really, really close together. So close that standard physics said, no, they should be repelling one another. But no, they get stuck together. And this represents the idea potentially of a magnetic monopole as well. By electromagnetic duality, the same mechanism in a magnetic field should produce magnetic monopoles. There it was. This is what I've been looking for. I mean, what? Chat, what? So basically, it's just saying here that if we do this, like I'm trying to understand this correctly, but it sounds like if we zap 2 lasers together, we should produce magnetic monopoles. Am I reading this correctly, guys? Because that's what it sounds like to me here. Expressions of one of these will have a directly analogous or dual expression in the other. So, yeah, okay. Doesn't really explain exactly how this works. Oh, monopole pair production in a magnetic field. Oh, 1982. That might be one we have to look at. Oops. The rate of monopole pair production in a weak external magnetic field is computed by a semi-classical method. The result is analogous to that of electron-positron pair. Oh, wow. OMG, chat. Oh boy. Did we just figure out how to make a magnetic monopole? So what's the answer? The answer is that we have electromagnetic duality. So what this means is what we do to one, the electric field, is going to have an impact on what we do to the magnetic field. So if we're creating positive and antiparticle, positron and electron pairs out of nowhere, and they're equalizing each other out, therefore there's zero net charge. What does that mean for our magnetic field? Our magnetic field now needs to be a zero. What is a zero electromagnetic field? All inward or all outward. Now we just realized how we create a magnetic monopole. Zap two lasers together, have it produce particle-antiparticle pairs, and then you're going to create a magnetic field that's going to be a magnetic monopole. It's 100%. We're zapping lasers together, chat. We are zapping lasers together. Holy smokes, chat. Holy smokes. Oh, boy. That didn't connect with me until just now when we were just watching this shit. There's no fucking way this video can be fake. I mean, did some PhD physicist that like is smarter than every physicist I've ever met make these videos? No way. No way. So high powerful lasers, zapping them together, high energy densities, causes the Schwinger effect to happen. Particle-antiparticle pairs start forming at extremely high amounts. That paper just said so. In fact, that paper said you'd have so many particle pairs that you would not be able to break the Schwinger limit, and you are going to not be able to create a black hole. Well, it's definitely going to create a magnetic monopole because you're going to have so many positive negative pairs created with a net zero electric field. They're going to create a magnetic monopole from all that. That's what we're seeing right here in these orbs. That's what's going on with these orbs. We're seeing the magnetic monopole. So we know it's possible because we are watching it right here in these videos. Oh boy, this is getting scary, chat. Holy shit. Holy shit, I'm understanding the science. I'm understanding the science. Holy crap. So, and we probably know why the LHC is failing too. The LHC is not powerful enough. Sabrine Hassenfelder just told us the energy levels from the LHC are not high enough. We need super high powered attosecond lasers, precision location so that the photons are interacting at a very specific point, smaller than the Schwarzschild radius. This could be like, when I'm talking small, I'm talking really small, microscopic point. And we need resonance. We just need them boom, 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 black hole. And then you're going to have your magnetic moment, your magnetic monopole, where it's basically creating this coherent structure that we see here. So actually, Andrew Cote, I probably have to get the pronunciation of his name correctly. He was in my replies and he was saying, well, no, you would need a magnetic field in order to be able to create your stable plasma effect or your compressed fusion to make a black hole. Well, yes, you would. And yes, now we can explain exactly how you get your magnetic field. And this is why you're going to have your non-radiating barrier, because the magnetic field will only extend so far, like we just saw from our YouTube video. Now, the YouTube video, they have a glass around it. In this case, we have a powerful enough magnetic field that we're not defining the distance. The math is defining the distance of the non-radiating barrier. The math is on the strength of the magnetic field. That's why this magnetic field, when you look at these orbs, look how big these orbs are. They're gigantic because that's the non-radiating barrier. That's the length of the magnetic field, the magnetic monopole. Wow. It's like folding the ether. That's an interesting analogy. Yeah, there's definitely a resonance going on in these orbs. 100% there's a resonance. And I would, if there's not a laser effect going on here, it would blow my mind. Now, after what I've read here today, 100%. We've got lasers, either that, one of those patents, probably maybe even both those patents from Lockheed Martin that are combining the lasers together. So basically, the military has a way to increase and amplify the energy levels of the lasers beyond what the public is aware of. and they have a capability to have a precision photon collision, basically like the LHC, but on steroids. So the U.S. military, the private military contractors have something like the Large Hadron Collider in the form of high-powered lasers, attosecond lasers, that are far more powerful than what the public even understands is possible. And those are causing something called the Schwinger effect, which is causing particle-antiparticle pairs to be produced, pulled straight out of the ether. We learned from the dynamic Casimir effect, we can actually capture those and turn them into real particle pairs, real photons as well. In this case, we want them to be annihilating one another because their electric charge associated to them is producing a magnetic moment, magnetic monopole moment. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that paper that we just read is going to be proven to be false in the future. I'm going to say that Salvatore Paez is going to be proven to be correct. And if that effect, when you reach that limit where now we break the Schwinger limit, we're going to take a look at that here in a second. If that is the super force, then the super force is going to end up being found to be true as well, or the Planck force. And now I think I understand why Salvatore Paez calls it the Planck force. Because really what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with the smallest distances in the quantum world. When we're talking about the distances of creating this, we're talking about distances that we can't even see. They're so small with these lasers and the photons hitting and creating this resonance over and over and over again. Boom, 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 boom. And like Salvatore Paez said, hammering on the vacuum until what? We make it nonlinear and we break through it. And we break through it, and now space becomes nonlinear. So let's go back to that. I'm getting excited, chat. I might actually have to have a martini after this. I'm getting excited. Okay. By electromagnetic duality, the same mechanism in a magnetic field should produce magnetic monopoles if they exist. A search conducted by the modal experiment using the Large Hadron Collider failed to detect monopoles. An analysis indicated on a lower bound of a monopole mass of whatever this is, some small level. In July of 2022, researchers at the National Graphene Institute, led by Andrew Geim, and a number of other collaborators, reported the observation of an analog process between electrons and holes at the Dirac point of a superlattice of structure on hexagonal boron nitride, and another of a twisted bilayer graphene. An interpretation is Zener-Klein tunneling. In June of 2023, researchers at the École Normale, something in Paris, and their collaborators reported the quantitative measurement of Schwinger pair production in doped graphene transistors in a 1D geometry. Okay, so this is probably going to be Friday. We're probably going to talk about this, guys. I'll give you guys a sneak peek on this. Where the fuck is it? Here it is. Dirac's hole theory and the Pauli principle, clearing up the confusion. In Dirac's hole theory, DH, the vacuum state is generally believed to be the state of minimum energy due to the assumption that the Pauli exclusion principle prevents the decay of positive energy electrons into occupied negative energy states. However, recently published papers have appeared that claim to show that there exist states with less energy than that of the vacuum. What has Ashton been saying for the last several weeks? Your vacuum state is not the lowest state. The vacuum isn't down here, guys. The vacuum's up here, and you can reduce the vacuum energy state below the current equilibrium that we see all around us. Here we will consider a simple model of the Dirac hole theory consisting of zero mass electrons in a 1D spacetime. It will be shown that for this model, there are states with less energy than the Dirac hole theory vacuum state, and the Pauli principle is obeyed. Therefore, the conjecture that the Pauli principle prevents the existence of states with less energy than the vacuum is not correct. What does that mean? That means negative energy, chat. That means negative energy is possible. That's what that paper is basically saying. Now let's look at the the Schwinger limit. In quantum electrodynamics, the Schwinger limit is a scale above which the electromagnetic field is expected to become nonlinear. The way that I look at this is like breaking through the fabric of space-time, but maybe that is an older understanding. The limit was first derived in one of quantum electrodynamics' earliest theoretical successes by Fritz Sauter. He was just mentioned in the other thing. and discussed further by Werner Heisenberg and his student Hans Heinrich Euler. The limit, however, is commonly named in the literature for the Julian Schwinger, who derived the leading nonlinear corrections to the fields and corrected the rate of electron-positron pair production in a strong electric field. The limit is typically reported as the maximum electric field or magnetic field before the nonlinearity of the vacuum. So this is basically how powerful can the electromagnetic field get before you just break down. And now here's the Planck constant. So this is why I think Salvatore Pais calls it the Planck force or the super force. Such an electric field is capable of accelerating a proton from rest to the maximum energy attained by protons at the Large Hadron Collider in approximately only 5 micrometers. The magnetic field is associated, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then let's see. In the vacuum, the classical Maxwell's equations are perfectly linear differential equations. This applies by the superposition principle. Superposition, something can be anywhere. That the sum of any two solutions to Maxwell's equations is another solution to Maxwell's equations. For example, two intersecting beams of light should simply add together their electric fields and pass right through each other. Thus, Maxwell's equations predict the impossibility of any but trivial elastic photon-photon scattering. In quantum electrodynamics, however, non-elastic photon-photon scattering becomes possible when the combined energy is large enough to create virtual electron-positron pairs spontaneously, illustrated by the Feynman diagram in the adjacent figure. This creates nonlinear effects that are approximately distributed by Euler and Heisenberg's nonlinear variant of matter. Wow. Okay. So what it's saying right there, guys, Alan gets it. We 1,000,000% Ashton have the proof now. Yeah, we have the mathematical proof. So what he's saying there is that Maxwell's equations say if you shoot two laser beams together and they intersect, then the total energy is going to be a combination of the two. And so you can imagine this the same way how a laser is even possible. They're bosonic. So bosons mean they collapse onto a single point. So of course, if you have two things overlap exactly, and they both each have energy of 1, then the total energy should be equal to 2. This also means that basically a laser is just a pointing vector. Laser is your pointing vector. So you have your electric field strength, you have your magnetic field, and then you have your pointing vector. And the laser vector travel is the pointing vector. So when we combine our two pointing vectors, we should have a situation where the electric and magnetic fields are also adding together. And what this says with the Schwinger limit is that if that electromagnetic field strength becomes so large, then what's going to happen is electron-positron pairs, those pairs that we were talking about, those charges, are going to start creating spontaneously. We're going to have a second-order effect start to happen. All of a sudden, our parents are going to give birth to a new effect that we didn't normally see because we achieve this energy density levels that is so high that the electromagnetic field strengths are going through the roof. And they create a point where it's breaking down the vacuum, essentially. Or breaking through to the ether, however you want to look at it. And this also explains why you can't do it with just one beam. You need more than one beam. A single plane wave is insufficient to cause nonlinear effects, even in quantum electrodynamics. The basic reason for this is that a single plane wave of a given ray energy can always be viewed from a different reference frame, which has less energy. That's a little bit beyond me. A single wave or photon does not have a center of momentum frame where its energy must be at minimal value. However, two waves or photons not traveling in the same direction always have a minimum combined energy of their center of momentum frame, and is this energy and the electric field strengths associated with it which determine the particle-antiparticle creation. So it literally is zapping two lasers together. Literally zapping two lasers together. Like this basically says right there, you must zap two lasers together to pull this off. You can't do it with just a single laser shooting out. Wow. Okay. Anything else we want to see on this? Proposals were made to measure elastic light-by-light scattering using strong electromagnetic fields of the Hadron Collider at the LHC. In 2019, the ATLAS experiment at the LHC announced the first definitive observation of photon-photon scattering. observed in lead ion collisions that produced fields as large as 10 to the 25 volts per meter, well in excess of the string limit. Observations of a cross-section of larger or smaller than that of the predicted standard model could signify new physics, such as axions. I feel like they just make up new words, man. Do you guys feel like they just make up new words when they don't understand something? We should just be going back to the stuff we've already invented instead of like just coming up with new words. The search of which is the primary goal of the PVLAS and several similar experiments. Alice observed more events than expected, potentially evidence that the cross-section is greater than predicted by the standard model, but the excess is not yet significantly significant. So this makes me wonder if they found that the ether is real and they just can't explain it. Interesting. The plan-funded ELI, that was that laser thing we were just looking at, which will study light at the intensity frontier, is likely to remain well below the string limit. So even this new place isn't producing energy levels that are high enough. So what have we learned here? Actually, let's listen to this. The Station of Extreme Light, SEL, is another laser facility under construction, which should be powerful enough to observe the effect. Oh, well, that's interesting. Where's that? That's in Shanghai, China. Oh, these are 100 petawatt lasers. Okay. Such an experiment in which ultra-intense light causes pair production has been described in popular media as creating a hernia in space-time. Well, okay, we didn't need to see that. So creating your hernia in space-time, what's the link to that? Oh, wow, 2011, a laser to give the universe a hernia. What does a hernia in space-time sound like, guys? Sounds like a black hole to me. That's what it sounds like to me. Yeah, I mean, Ryan's got good takes all around. Can we take a moment to acknowledge how amazing the human brain is? Given enough time, we can engineer anything. Absolutely. Humans, the superpower of humans is our adaptability, our creativity, and our innovation. We can reverse engineer anything that we see as well. Absolutely incredible. It won't surprise me if the Chinese are the first ones to publicly figure this out, because the Chinese suppression isn't as powerful as the suppression in the United States. Based on what we're seeing in the MH370 videos, the private military contractors have already figured out they're super far ahead of the public with respect to lasers and running these experiments to show that we can bend space-time and produce particle-antiparticle pairs. And all of this science is tied together as well. So this is probably also then linked, because once we have negative energy, negative mass, once we can produce a black hole, then we can produce a warp drive, and we can produce a wormhole as well. So this is why I talk about all these things. This is why I talk about exotic vacuum objects. This is why I talk about free energy, the ether, warp drives. I've just been trying to figure out how it's possible. And it turns out it's all out there. And if people followed this investigation and stuff that we've been doing, they'll see the path to figuring this out as well. And this is why I made the post earlier today, where I was talking about people have to undergo an awakening. It's just there. You just have to see the universe from the right perspective. And people should be skeptical of what they know, because there's so much stuff that we can't explain. We can't explain dark energy. We can't explain dark matter. We don't know where the 0-point fluctuations are coming from. 0-point energy just gets straight up ignored, even though it's 100% real. The Casimir effect proves that it's real, and it just gets ignored. Nobody's interested in how we might be able to extract energy from a source of unlimited energy that the Dirac Sea explains. Blows me away, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tonight. We probably will do a follow-up in the next few weeks. Actually, as well, I'm planning on interviewing Professor Simon Howell and talking about ball lightning. Now that I know all of this, holy shit, we are going to have some good stuff to talk about. Guys, we just upgraded. We just leveled up like 10 levels here in terms of understanding the science around plasma physics and on ball lightning. Like, if you watch this stream, you just gained like a whole semester's worth of condensed matter physics understanding, and you've just caught way up now. So now we don't have to just talk about, oh, ball lightning is cool, stuff's floating around the sky. We can talk about, like, yeah, you can produce that by attosecond lasers, and you have them jammed together, and then you have the Schwinger effect happen, and you create these particle-antiparticle pairs, and you get magnetic monopoles out of it, and you're basically creating black holes. Like, Go ahead and take this information to your local bar this weekend and impress your friends, guys. I don't think you're going to pick up any girls with this information, but you can sure as hell impress the other dudes at the bar for sure. So, okay, guys, I think we're going to call it there for tonight. Yeah, never stop learning, guys. Never give up. Always think outside the box. There's more to this world than what we've been led to believe by the media and by academia. So remember what Ken Shoulders said about academia is that academia isn't looking for the answers. You have to look outside of that to find out what's out there and what's possible, guys. Okay, guys, I'm going to go hit the hay. I'm exhausted. Let's play us out with our cipher. The cipher's awesome. No dancing tonight. We'll save the dancing for later. For Lockheed Martin, this one's for you, Lockheed.
Then keep your secret.
We're going to get those secrets, Lockheed Martin. We're going to get them. Okay, guys, have a great night. Peace out, Mitch 370X.
In the fields where the skies are wide, talking about a journey through the cosmic ride. Einstein and Thorne, they set the stage for a trip through time across the space age. Wormholes connect distant points in space, traversable paths to a far-off place. No black holes pull, no crushing weight, just a cosmic tunnel to a distant gate. Talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Bowling 777 through a wormhole flow. We're talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Bowling 777 through a wormhole flow. Exotic matter, negative energy's the key to stabilize the wormhole for you and me. Quantum vacuum squeezed so tight, creating conditions for this wondrous flight. Static fields and lasers in the lab they play, generating forces in a new kind of way. Gravitational squeezing, Casimir's force, negative zones we need to stay the course. Talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Boeing 777 through a wormhole flow. Thin shell formalism plates so fine, spherical geometry we realign. Energy conditions that we must defy. For a stable wormhole, let's give it a try. Forces balancing the plates, creating the throat, open the gates, from Earth to the stars in a single bound, a shortcut through space profound. Engineers and dreamers hold the key to future worlds and what we could be. With science in hand, we forge ahead through the cosmic paths that we now tread. We're talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Boeing 777 through a wormhole flow. From the fields to the stars, we break the chains. Understanding the universe, we make the gains. Lil Hula Crunk shines, bringing truth to light. Through his music, we'll explore the night. With wormholes and stargates, our path is clear. Exploring the cosmos.